In 1949, a man won the Nobel Prize in medicine for drilling into the human brain and cutting it apart. The prize has never been taken back, and within a few years, the operation it celebrated would be remembered as one of the worst mistakes medicine ever made. I'm a vascular surgeon, and this is the story of how the most respected institution in science put its highest honor on a procedure that damaged thousands of people. It comes from the medical journals and the Nobel archives themselves. You're going to see where the idea came from, why brilliant doctors embraced it, and what finally killed it, because that part is stranger than the surgery. And by the end, you'll understand a question that still hangs over medicine today. How does science decide what to reward? His name was António Egas Moniz, a Portuguese neurologist, and he was already famous before any of this. He had invented cerebral angiography, a way to inject dye and actually see the blood vessels of the living brain on an X-ray. It was a genuine breakthrough. Surgeons still use its descendants every day. So when Moniz turned his attention to mental illness, the world was inclined to listen. In 1935, he proposed something radical. If you severed the nerve fibers connecting the front of the brain to the deeper structures beneath it, he argued, you could calm patients trapped in severe, untreatable psychosis. With a neurosurgeon named Almeida Lima, he drilled holes in the skull and at first injected alcohol to destroy the tissue. Then they built a tool for it, a leucotomy, to cut the white matter directly. He published his first 20 cases in 1936 and reported that many had improved. Here I have to stop and be fair to him, because the popular version of the story is lazy. It tells you that everyone involved was either a monster or a fool. They weren't. To understand why the world reached for this, you have to stand inside a psychiatric hospital in the 1930s. There were no antipsychotic drugs. None. They wouldn't exist until the 1950s. The asylums were overcrowded and understaffed, filled with people suffering in ways that medicine could not touch. The other cutting-edge treatments of the day were just as crude. Shock therapy with insulin, deliberately infecting patients with malaria to induce fever. In that world, an operation that seemed to quiet an unreachable patient didn't look like cruelty, it looked like mercy. That is the uncomfortable truth the video won't let you forget. The lobotomy was born from desperation, not from malice. And there's a detail the textbooks tend to skip. Moniz may not have been the true inventor at all. A French psychiatrist, Maurice Ducoste, had been injecting substances directly into the frontal lobes of hundreds of patients years earlier, using nearly the same entry point in depth. The two men presented their work at the same medical meetings. Moniz never once credited him, so the father of psychosurgery may have quietly built his Nobel on someone else's idea. But that is a small scandal next to what happened when the operation crossed the Atlantic. In the United States, a neurologist named Walter Freeman took Moniz's idea and turned it into a movement. Freeman was charismatic, theatrical, and utterly convinced. And in 1946, he introduced a version that still makes surgeons flinch, the transorbital lobotomy. Instead of drilling the skull, he lifted the eyelid, placed an instrument shaped like an ice pick against the thin bone at the top of the eye socket, tapped it through with a mallet, and swept it side to side to sever the lobe. No operating room. No neurosurgeon required. He performed it in offices, in clinics, sometimes in front of reporters. Now let me tell you why that horrifies me as a surgeon. Everything that makes an operation safe, the sterile field, the trained team, the controlled environment, the ability to see what your instrument is doing, Freeman threw all of it away in the name of speed and access. He was proud that a psychiatrist with no surgical training could learn it in an afternoon. To me, that isn't a shortcut. It's the removal of every safeguard we spend our careers defending. His own colleagues in neurosurgery said as much and broke with him over it. Over roughly 3 decades, Freeman performed more than 3,000 of these procedures, and they did not deliver what was promised. Some patients did become calmer, But calm often meant emptied out, blunted, apathetic, robbed of the very personality the family had hoped to save. Others were left far worse. Some died. The procedure damaged the part of the brain that makes us most ourselves, and there was no undo. So what finally stopped it? Not the ethics, at least not first. It was a pill. In the early 1950s, the first true antipsychotic drug, chlorpromazine, arrived, and for the first time, psychiatry had something that could reach these patients without a blade. Almost overnight, the reason for the operation evaporated. The lobotomy didn't so much lose an argument as become unnecessary. Add the growing public horror, captured in books and films that fixed the ice pick image in memory forever, and by the 1960s it was finished. But the Nobel Prize remained, and it still does. Which brings me to why this story matters far beyond one bad operation. There's a comparison that historians of medicine make directly, and it should unsettle anyone who trusts science to be self-correcting. A century earlier, a doctor named Ignaz Semmelweis discovered that if physicians simply washed their hands, they would stop killing mothers in childbirth. He was right, provably, measurably right, and the profession destroyed him for it. He died in an asylum. Moniz took an operation that harmed people, and the profession gave him its highest prize. One man was punished for being right too early. The other was rewarded for being wrong at the perfect moment. The difference between them wasn't the evidence. It was whether the medical world was ready to believe. That is the real lesson, and it's still live. The Nobel for lobotomy was awarded before modern controlled clinical trials existed, before we demanded proof of long-term outcomes rather than enthusiasm and a compelling story. And I'll be honest about the pull of that enthusiasm because I feel it too. A bold new technique is seductive to a surgeon. It's exciting. It makes you feel like you're at the edge of something, and that feeling is exactly what evidence-based medicine exists to keep in check, because the history of my profession is full of brilliant, confident people who were sure and wrong. The idea itself didn't vanish, by the way. It grew up. Today there is a field called psychiatric neurosurgery, deep brain stimulation, precise, reversible, guided by imaging down to the millimeter, hedged with ethics boards and informed consent, used for a small number of severe, otherwise hopeless cases of OCD and depression. It is the redeemed descendant of Moniz's crude cut, the same instinct to reach the mind through the brain, finally done with humility, and it still carries the stigma of the lobotomy, proof that a mistake this large casts a shadow across generations. So should the Nobel be revoked? The committee has never done it, perhaps because it would mean admitting that science, at its most prestigious, can be seduced just like anyone else, by confidence, by a good story, by the wish for a cure. Moniz kept his prize, the patients kept their scars, and medicine kept the lesson whether it wanted it or not. If you want to see the other side of that coin, the doctor who was right and was punished for it instead of praised, that's the story of Ignaz Semmelweis, and it's already here on the channel. Watch it next.